All right, welcome to Cameron's Mixtape. This week is a very special episode. We're doing a two-parter, and you're going to see the first part today, second part later. Let's not worry about that, but I am here with my cohort, my sidekick, my buddy, Cameron.
How you doing, Scott?
So, what did we do this week? Let's let the
what we
audience
did
in.
this week is that we gave each other 4 albums to exchange. He listened to my albums, and I listened to his albums, and I'm going to give my overall feel of the albums, and he's going to give his overall feel on the second part.
Awesome. So, this is the albums I gave Cameron. So, what were they? What was the first one you listened to?
The first one I listened to is the Decemberist Hazards of Love.
All right, and then the second one?
Harry Nilsson Schmilson. Modest Mouse. I forget the name of the album.
It's building nothing out of something.
Building Nothing Out of Something. And Nico Case, the harder
The worst things get.
The harder I fight. The harder I fight, the more I love.
Yep. And so basically, these are 4 of my favorite albums of all time, and you gave me certain ones, but let's keep that as a surprise. We'll get into that in the next episode. So, what was your favorite album that you listened to?
My favorite album is Nelson Schmilson.
Nelson Schmilson. Do you have a favorite track in particular?
Well, one track that I did like is Jump Into the Fire.
Jump Into the Fire is a classic. Like, they used it in Goodfellas. They used it in Casino. Basically, Martin Scorsese likes that song, and he uses it in every single movie that he gets his hands on.
I mean, he was known for Everybody's Talking, but I think Jump Into the Fire is a better song.
And his most famous one was actually a ballad, which is off of Nelson Schmilson. Do you know which one it was?
Old Forgotten Soldier?
No, Without You. That one was written by Badfinger. And he basically wrote it with them. They had a different tone to it, different texture and sound, and they had different lyrics. And then he got his hands on it, and he changed the words, rewrote the instrumentation, and then Without You became one of the biggest wedding songs of all time. So here's a man who could balance a ballad with a nice upbeat tempo. So Jump Into the Fire, I believe the album I gave you had 2 different versions of it.
Yeah, it did. One was the original version, and the other was the demo version, which technically the demo version is actually the original version. But
and I think the demo's better.
I mean, sometimes, when I really liked both of the versions, but I would see the demo was better in certain ways.
I mean, not all of the demos on there are better. There's a demo of Coconut, which is...
Yeah.
The demo of Coconut is not as good as...
Wasn't there a demo of Old Forgotten Soldier on there, too?
Yes, there is. You really liked Old Forgotten Soldier.
Yeah, you put the deluxe tracks on there. The original album had 12, I believe,
I gave you the remastered, which came out 3 years ago when they released his documentary, Everybody's Talking, on Who is Harry Nilsson and Why is Everybody Talking About Him. So they released all of his albums in a box set, and I picked it up because I was a wasteful teenager, and I basically gave you the album that was given to me, and that had everything on it, except I didn't include the Spanish versions of songs. So because the file was too big. But next album, and we can get talking about Harry Nilsson after, but next album, what did you really like after that?
Well, I liked the Decemberist. It was an indie sort of thing. It kind of was a acoustic rock sort of thing, you know.
I thought you were going to like that one the best, and I was very happy when you said you liked Nelson Schmilson the best.
Well, the Decemberist Hazards of Love is definitely a close second. It almost leads into a tie.
Yeah.
I mean, I really like that album.
Do you know why the Hazards of Love is different than all the other albums?
Well, I can't think of it off the top of my head. I believe the reasons why it's different is I think it's a concept album.
It is a concept album. It's actually a fairy tale concept album. Basically, the story of Hazards of Love takes place in the middle of the forest, in the middle of the river. And there is a evil queen who runs the forest, and she has a son who is actually not her son. She adopted him, and her intent is to marry him. And he falls in love with her sworn enemy, this kindly man who runs the river, and he has a river's daughter. And basically, her name's Margaret, the son's name is William. They fall in love, and the queen kidnaps her, and he has to save her. What track did you like the best off of it?
I would say I liked the Hazards of Love Part 1.
Hazards of Love Part 1. The prettiest whistle is hard to thistle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. My favorite off of that album is actually Hazards of Love Part 4. Drowning by the Water is the name of the song, and that's very depressing to say out loud.
Yeah.
I also like the Rake song.
Yeah.
And I thought that you would like Won't Want for Love because it has a higher bass and like a nice electric sound to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anything about the album itself, Colin Malloy's writing style, because he uses a lot of imagery. Was it like easier to get into?
Yeah, well, I kind of, like when it started off, I think Prelude was a pretty good intro.
Oh, yeah, that's a gorgeous intro.
I mean, it's one of those things where I do think he's a very good songwriter.
Yeah, it kind of feels like a musical.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what did you listen to after that?
What I listened to after that is Modest Mouth building something out of nothing.
Something out of nothing. It's called building nothing out of something.
I was going to say that first.
Yeah.
Building nothing out of something.
That's how they trick you. It's building nothing out of something because they think they're nothing. And they took classic songs from the 50s. They took Sleepwalk, and then it became Sleepwalking. And they took, like, old 50s music and old different, like, sounding guitar riffs, and they turned it into this album with lyrics. And it's crazy that you would appreciate the homage.
Yes. My favorite song off the album was the title track. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head.
Was it Working on Leaving the Living?
Or
Endless Math Equation?
Maybe it was...
Never Ending Math Equation.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Yeah, Never Ending Math Equation is probably the best song off that album. I like Sleepwalking, and I like Medication.
I do, too.
What did you think of Broke? Because Broke was more ambient noises and more like one word. It was very different. Well, this is a very different album.
Well, I like it. They're not avant-garde to say, but it's kind of, in a way, like, the best way to describe it is experimental.
Oh, yeah. That's the only way to explain it. This entire band was experimental. They're actually going on tour this year. They haven't been on tour in almost a decade. So, yeah. Any other tracks that you didn't like off the album? Because this is a very hard album to get into.
Well, there's not really much that I didn't like about it. I really did like the album.
Yeah. Life of Arctic Sound was actually written for another album called The Moon in Antarctica, which came out after this, but they had it ready and they just threw it on there. It doesn't really fit into the album, but yeah. And finally, what was the last album you listened to?
Nico Case, the worse things get, the harder I fight, the harder I fight, the more I love.
Yeah, that's a very long title, and we actually talked about it earlier in the previous episode because it was nominated for Grammy. Now, what did you think of it?
I thought it was pretty good. I mean, it's not what it's an alternative sort of thing. It almost sounds like country at times.
Yeah, it's that rockabilly country
Yeah.
folk alternative.
I mean,
Really
if you want to get me
avant-garde.
started on country, I mean, my favorite country artist is Willie Nelson,
Right.
and you know,
Well, Willie Nelson and Nico have something in common. They're both redheads. Do you have a favorite track off of this
yeah,
album?
Von Ferret's Return.
Oh man, that's a good one.
Yeah, I like that. That came with the deluxe edition of the album, which
It's actually on both, but she tries to trick everyone. She tries to trick everyone and say that it's a bonus track, but if you buy the regular version,
yeah,
it's on there too. It's what she does. She thinks she's being funny, and I think she's hysterical when she does that. Is there a song that you don't really like off the album, or that just didn't really?
I mean, I really did like the album. I mean, you know, it's not what I would really. It's not really usually what I listen to, but you know, I'm an open-minded person, so you know.
Yeah. What do you think of Calling Cards?
I thought that was a pretty good track
That's my favorite track off of there, and that's actually about this entire album is based on she lost her parents 2 years ago, and she wrote this for them. And basically it's about having failed relationships, and the one relationship she has that haunts her to this day was, in the end, she didn't really have that strong of a relationship with her parents. And all the bad boyfriends and all the bad relationships she talks about, but the one that she misses the most is her parents, and I think that's really very sad and nice thing to do.
Yeah.
There's a Velvet Underground cover on there. Did you notice?
Yeah, I did. I didn't notice. I forget which one it was though.
It's track 3, Afraid. Of all the albums, what would you look in that camera right now and say you have to go out and you have to buy this album right
Harry
now?
Nilsson Smilshin.
All right. Because, as you know,
Well-
I have a little obsession with Harry Nilsson.
Well, I do believe that he was an excellent songwriter, and that, like Scott was saying, if he was popular around the time the Beatles, he could probably write some of the Beatles songs,
Well,
or all of them possibly.
you know that he was actually best friends with Ringo Starr and John Lennon,
Yes.
which I think that's amazing, because his one of his final albums, Pussycats, was written and produced by him and John Lennon, and the story behind that is John Lennon worked him so hard that he left the recording studio every day with a very sore throat, and he couldn't talk, and he would come home and his wife's like, "Oh, hey, how was the recording session?" And he'd be like, "It was fine. It was really great." And
Yeah.
he couldn't talk for days. And do you think that's the sign of a really dedicated
Yes.
performer?
Yes.
Do you know anything else about Harry Nilsson? I know you know a ton, so this is your time to shine.
Well, I do. Like I said, he was an excellent songwriter. And, I mean, he was born in 1941
And
and died in 93.
93.
I believe it was 93. It might have been 94, but I'm thinking it was 93.
It was 93 because
Yeah.
it was right after The Fisher King, which was the last song he ever wrote. And that is really sad, actually, if you think about it. How do you know that he was born in 1941?
Well, I knew that because I read something about him.
And he also has a song
Yeah.
called 1941. Now, of these albums, which one would you give a second listen to?
Decemberist Hazard of Love.
All right. And what would you listen to really hard this time if you had to pick one thing?
Nilsson Schmilsson all the way.
All the way?
Yeah, the first, definitely my first choice.
Now, what song off of that album didn't you really, care for, but you feel like if you listen to it over and over again, you would end up loving it?
I mean, it's hard to say. There weren't many songs that I really didn't like. I mean, Gotta Get Up was an okay song, but I mean, there are better songs on that album. But that song, he did write really good material. It just didn't. It just wasn't like Jump Into the Fire.
Yeah. And finally, before we go on to our next segment, is if you had to suggest an album
For third place?
Yeah, for third place, because you said Nelson Schmelson is tied with Decemberist. Would you award it to Nico Case or?
Modest Mouse building something out of nothing.
And
wait, no, building
nothing out of something. Ah, you were so close. I didn't want to correct you, but
yeah.
But what track? Same question that I gave you before. What track do you feel like if you listen to over and over again, if you listen to this album repetitively, would you be addicted to by like the end of the week?
The title track.
Title track, Never Ending Math Equation?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that song is, it's like a metaphor for life, because life is like a never ending math equation.
Yeah.
It just keeps going. And that's one of the lines in the song.
Yeah. I like track 2. It was kind of different.
Working on Leaving the Living?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my favorite track off of that album. It's a 7-minute track, I think.
Yeah.
7 or 8. It's really long. But
7:10.
7:10. Wow.
7
You
minutes.
remember that?
Yeah.
You remembered it was 7:10. This kid is a genius, guys. All right, so we're on to our next segment. We're talking about movies. So this is Cameron and Scott pick some movies.
All right.
What movie did you pick this week?
School of Rock.
With Jack Black.
Yep.
That is one of the funniest movies ever.
I know. I really do like it though. I mean, it really. I mean, Jack Black is a good guitar player. I would say he's really good.
Oh, he's great, but that little kid is amazing.
I know.
I shouldn't say little kid because he's now like 24.
Yeah.
But yeah, that movie came out when I was your age, and the way they advertised it is it's The Commitments with little kids. And if you don't know what The Commitments is, it was this movie about musicians in Ireland, and basically no one wanted to listen to them, so they thought, hey, why don't we put Jack Black in the classroom with kids? And
well, what it was is that Jack Black, he was with his band, right? And then his band, from the beginning, like the band wanted to go in a different direction, sort of thing. They kicked him out of the band because he thought he was
better than the band.
What happened after that is that the school called him that it was going to give him his job, but Jack picked up the phone and then, well, his name in the movie is Dewey Finn.
Yep.
And what he did is he picked up the phone and then he pretended to be
Dewey.
No.
Ned.
Yeah.
He pretended to be Ned Schneebly.
Yeah, Ned Schneebly.
Schneebly.
Yeah.
Potato.
He pretended to be Ned Schneebly, and he became the teacher. And when he went to the school,
well, he can't teach. That's the thing.
Yeah, he didn't teach.
He's a terrible teacher.
So what he did is he said, first thing he did is that he said, anybody got any food? And then he goes and then he finds a sub in one of the desks. And
he also finds out that the kids can play music.
Yeah.
So he decides
what he does, right, is after when he's in class when no one's there, he hears them playing music. It was a classical thing that they were doing, and then he said, well, he had that idea to do the band again, so he brought out all of his music, and then when he did that, Cream's Hold Sunshine for Your Love was playing when he got his instruments.
Now, what I want to ask you about this is, how important is movie and music, like, together? Like, a film about musicians. How important is that?
Well, it is very important, I would say, because, well, I mean, music has been in movies for a long, long time.
And Jack Black is like this Renaissance man. He's a musician. He's a comedy writer. He's a comedy musician. He can do anything. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
in this film really showcases that.
Tenacious D, when he started that in '94, Kyle Gass, who was the other guitar player, actually at first when
He's also in the film.
1986, right? He was in Tenacious. I can't remember the name of.
Tenacious D, The Pick of Destiny.
Yep. That's it, The Pick of Destiny. He was in that, too. That was a really good movie. I mean, School of Rock, I mean, I love that movie. I mean.
So, what I picked a film called Almost Famous, which Jack Black was originally supposed to be in.
But Seymour Phil Popman.
Philip Seymour Hoffman. He actually took over the role because Jack Black did this instead. He did School of Rock. And basically, Almost Famous, are you familiar with this movie?
I've never watched it, I'll be completely honest with that.
It's loosely based on the real life of writer-director Cameron Crowe, who worked for Rolling Stone when he was 15 years old, and he went on tour with Led Zeppelin, but they couldn't get the rights to Led Zeppelin, so basically they changed it to a band called Stillwater, which is a mix between the Allman Brothers and Zeppelin without the accents. And it documents his journey with the band Stillwater and his connection to Lester Bangs, of Cream magazine.
Yeah, I know who he is. I didn't agree with a lot of things. He was...
Well, Lester Bangs is played by Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah.
And he has this amazing scene in the movie where he's talking about music and how musicians are cool, and writers, journalists for music magazines are like the uncool kids, are unpopular. And basically, when Philip Seymour Hoffman passed a few weeks ago, they picked out this scene because it speaks about music, it speaks about movies, it speaks about acting, it speaks about life, and basically the quote is, you'll never understand or appreciate the advice you get from someone who is uncool because it's the currency of the universe, or something like that. I'm butchering it. I'm wrecking this line.
Yeah.
But basically, the entire movie is about trying to fit in, and musicians are trying to fit in, and you agree with that. Musicians are just people who are trying to fit in and can't really find their place.
Well, to a certain degree, yes. I mean, not everyone. I mean, some people already fit in and just do music
Right.
for other reasons, but, I mean, I do music because it's my passion.
Right.
I mean, music is my biggest passion, no doubt about that.
Oh, there is no doubt about that. And the great thing about this film, about Almost Famous, is that everyone is connected in the film. Like, you have Rolling Stone, who hires this 15-year-old kid, and the kid's trying to fit in with this band. It's just... Actually, I just realized we did 2 movies about kids in the music industry. Good for us. Good for us. And the message of this film is be yourself. Whether you're a musician or whether you're a writer, write what you know.
It's pretty much saying, and even though I didn't see the movie, so I kind of have to go off for what you're saying, but pretty much I can get the whole idea. It's about don't follow the crowd, do what you feel is right, be your individual self and not follow the crowd just because that's what's cool.
That and how music does connect us and moves us. And the main character, William, falls in love with a fan of the band. They're called Band-Aids in the film. And she's played by Kate Hudson. And the lead singer of the band is in love with her too. So you have this nice love triangle. And basically, it's just a good movie. It's really good. It captures how great music was in the 70s, how great it was to be a writer in the 70s, how great it was to be even, a roadie in the 70s, because you get to see Red Dog, who was the Allman Brothers roadie.
Yep.
Yeah, and the movie's just ridiculous. So, if there's one thing that would sum up School of Rock for you, what would it be? Just one word.
Well,
look at that camera and tell me one word that would sum up.
One word that would sum up. Very. You
heard it first.
Versatile.
Very versatile.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, because it's one of those things where has a set structure, but it's also
varies off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit, but it's not too present at all. I mean, it mostly stays on plot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great movie, and
people should see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're reaching the end of our time. We're almost out. So next time, what are we gonna do? What are you gonna make me do next time?
You go over my albums.
All right. So just give one title. Look at that camera and give one title that I'm gonna have to listen to. One album.
One album that he's gonna be listening to is Pantera, Vulgar Display of Power.
Alrighty. So I'm Scott. This is Cameron, and for right now.
Yep.
We'll see you later.